Weekend getaway? Love Lansing like a local. And we promise, you'll love Lansing just as much as we do.
You're watching My Michigan TV.
It's time for Lehto Live. Join author, historian, radio host, and YouTube sensation Steve Lehto as he breaks down Michigan's top stories, talks with business leaders and professional experts, and checks out the variety of statewide festivals and events that Michigan has to offer. You're watching Lehto Live on My Michigan TV.
And welcome to My Michigan Television. I'm Steve Lehto. It is a Friday in Michigan. They tell me that snow is coming. Snow is coming this afternoon, so we may have to deal with that a little later on. A little later on today, also, I'm going to be talking about a shocking development in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan that has to do with my family's history and my personal history. We'll get to that. But first, this is very exciting happening in Detroit, is the Catalyst Angel Program. And this is brought to us by TechTown Detroit, and techtowndetroit.org is the website. But we're joined now by Dr. Dawn Batts, and we're going to talk about this program and what it does, because it creates a lot of good by helping people get started in business, helping people invest. And it's one of those things where I think pretty much that everybody that touches this program is bettered by it. And it's basically designed to help people. So first of all, welcome to the program, Dr. Dawn Batts. How are you today?
Hi, Steve. I'm doing very well. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, and it's great to hear about your program here. Can you tell us, first of all, and we've talked on this show and on this channel before, TechTown Detroit, but briefly, what is that for the viewers here who might not be familiar with it?
Yes, TechTown is the entrepreneurial hub that's located in the city of Detroit around the Midtown area. And we service both small businesses, retail businesses, and tech-based businesses. We've been around for a little over 20 years now.
And we've talked before about the city of Detroit has got a very, very long history. It goes back centuries. And it's had its ups and downs. And unfortunately, the last few decades, there have been some downs. And one way that you bring things back is a little bit at a time. You can't solve every problem at once. And so you want to draw people downtown. You need people living there. You need people that have businesses there. You need to have people invest there. But of course, if people are living there and they spend their money there, they're investing. So a lot of this stuff feeds off of itself. And so TechTown Detroit specializes in helping the small businesses and the entrepreneurs down there, right?
And tech-based businesses, yes, we do. We have a long-standing history, particularly with brick and mortar businesses. So a lot of businesses that you do see in the Midtown, downtown area are businesses that we very well could have helped.
And again, a lot of people think of tech, they think, oh, Silicon Valley, or California or something. And there's a lot of tech stuff here in Michigan and in Detroit. And, there are people inventing stuff everywhere. And so there's no reason that there can't be tech here. But once in a while, it takes somebody who's got an idea, but they might need some money, for instance, to get things going. So I know that you have the Catalyst Angel Program. Can you explain to us what that is?
Yes, it is one of my favorite subjects because what you just described earlier is what I call ecosystem building. We need all of those pieces in order for the ecosystem as a whole to work. The Callus Angel Program is another piece of that. And basically, what we realize is that we need more money available for businesses, high growth and tech-based businesses, in order for us to really support innovation. And like you just mentioned, tech businesses are all these ideas. We need more money there. We've done a great job in Michigan, particularly over the last 5 years. We've seen venture capital money come at the tune of 800%, but we also need more. For some of these early startup companies, that's a little bit earlier in their progress or in their process. So the Callus Angel Program intends to identify and help train 200 Black, Latinx, and or women emerging investors in the Great Lakes region. So we go beyond the Detroit area, and we're including the Great Lakes region. That training is pretty extensive. It includes some courses, but it also includes opportunities to mentor and engage in the ecosystem.
And so a lot of times, I know people watch, for instance, the TV show Shark Tank, right? And people come into Shark Tank and they've got an invention or a business, and they ask these investors if they want to invest in their product. And we've all heard these stories about, like, if I'd only been there when the guy invented the Slinky, I would have invested.
Right.
I would have given that guy money. And so, unfortunately, most people just think in terms of the inventor. They want, if I invented something. But there's an opportunity because there are bright people in this area who've got ideas for businesses, tech ideas, inventions, whatever it might be, but they need investors. And obviously, if they wanted to, they could go to California and Silicon Valley and fight it out with everybody else out there who's got some new idea for a Bluetooth cheese grater or something. But there are people here in Michigan with money, and this program that you've got is designed to help coach and train the people with the money how to invest it and what to do with it, correct?
That is correct. And Michigan has a healthy angel community as well. We probably have over a dozen angel groups. I think the last number I saw was close to 1,600 individuals that have been identified or self-identified as angels. So we have a healthy community, but we need to make sure that we have a healthy and diverse community of angel investors. And that's what this program helps us do, as well as the Great Lakes region.
And that's a fascinating concept to me, because I've talked to people. In fact, I met a guy who was an investment guy at one of the trade shows that we at My Michigan Television covered a while back. And he said, the interesting thing is, he goes, there's people out there with great ideas and great businesses. He goes, there's also people out there with money who are looking to invest. And now, don't get me wrong, it doesn't just mean that you just go, oh, it's like matchmaking, you and you get together. There's an art and a science to doing it the right way. But the fact of the matter is that if you are a woman who's Black or Latinx or just a woman, and you've got money and you want to invest it, but you don't want to just stick it in a bank account or something, but you actually want to help some entrepreneurs or some tech people in this area, this program will help them get involved in that, right?
Yes, and actually it's just a little bit more extensive. So is any emerging investors that identify as Black, Latinx, and or women, so it's not just for women. So we want to make sure we open that, that up so other people can also invest. While we don't do matchmaking, we want to make sure that the investors are equally prepared and understand that investment process, just like we do with founders. So TechTown does a great job with founders, helping them prepare. We have multiple programs to prepare founders. We also want to make sure, particularly newer investors, they understand that process. What does it look like for due diligence? What should term sheets look like? What are the risks involved in angel investing?
Right. And obviously, just because someone has money doesn't mean they can just throw it at something and have it work. So
exactly.
TechTown Detroit's the organization that you are the capital strategist with. Tell me about Angel Capital Association. What do they do?
Yeah, so Angel Capital Association is the national association of angel investors. They have one of the largest, I think it's over 16,000 members. So if you think about a trade network, if you will, that's what they are for angel investors. They are very well rooted in advocacy, for angel investing, as well as education for angel investing, and then connections. So they are our partners that deliver the educational component through their Angel University.
Okay. And then I also see Venture Well as another organization that's called out here in the press release I've got in my hand. And you work with them as well?
Yes, Venture was also a national organization. So again, when we talk ecosystem, not only local, but how do we begin to connect with some of those national resources? VentureWell is very well known in the entrepreneur education space. So they work a lot with entrepreneurs, but they also have mentors in residence, and that's where our angel investors come from, or for this program. So we actually have an opportunity for our angel investors to be mentored in residence for these new founders. So you can imagine you have angels in the room, you have founders in the room. It demystifies for both of them, as well as give them hands-on experience.
And I assume that you're about to make a big investment. It probably comes in very handy to be able to talk to somebody else who's gone through this already once before, and they can explain to you, here's what's going to happen. You might feel this way. You might feel this way. We're going to see some of this, but don't worry about
Exactly.
that. And that hand holding has got to be very valuable.
Exactly. The learning, you use your skills. So angel investing is more than money. It's also the skill set that you bring. It could also be the networking you bring, because most of these founders would need more than your money, right? Unless you just have a lot and you want to put in one founder, which I wouldn't recommend, but I'm not here to give advice. But so it's just the network, it's the skill set, as well as the financial commitment.
And I know from watching Shark Tank, and again, I hate to keep getting back to that, but I think that's the model most of us recognize, is someone will come into the Shark Tank and go, I've got this invention. Okay, this widget here is the world's greatest widget. I've sold a bunch of them, but I think I can make it bigger. Mm-hmm. And what often happens is the different investors will actually explain and go, you know something, it doesn't just take money. You don't just throw money at this and solve the problem. It's going to take somebody with know-how as to take this to the next level. And so that kind of mentorship is obviously probably just as valuable as the money is.
Oh, by far, because you do want to make sure, the intent is to make sure that business is successful, because especially if you're investing, you want to make sure that they have what they need. And sometimes they need a different skill set or connection to a particular channel, for example.
Okay. And now I noticed in one of the press releases, it said that Techtown Detroit got a $400,000 grant from the U.S. Economic Development Administration. And that was kind of like, is that like seed money to get this program rolling, or what is that?
Yeah, so we use that money to pay for the educational sessions we talked about with ACA. We want to make sure that our investors can take those classes. There's 6 classes that they take, and up to 9. They can take those classes without having to be concerned about paying for those classes. So the funding goes towards the courses. It also goes towards mentor in residence, and then making sure that our investors are engaged in the ecosystem. Every year, the Michigan Angel community puts on a summit, and we will pay for our participants to attend that summit.
Okay. And again, the name of the organization that you're with is Techtown Detroit. We want to make sure that this is clear, that we're talking about emerging angel investors in the Great Lakes region, which is actually much more encompassing, not just Michigan, but Ohio, Indiana, Wisconsin, and so on, right?
Yes, Illinois and Minnesota.
Oh, yeah. Let's not forget about them. They touch a couple Great Lakes, too.
And by the way, they have brought at least 25 people through this program, Minnesota. They are very active.
Oh, wow. And do they actually come from Minnesota down to Detroit to take those classes?
Well, it's virtual because the classes are held through Angel University, which is actually more Angel Capital Associations on the East Coast. So all of those are virtual, so it's very convenient.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come right back. We are talking to Dr. Dawn Betts, the Techtown Capital Strategist, about the Catalyst Angel Program. We're going to take a quick break right back after this on My Michigan Television.
Welcome to Mackinac Island.
We were just named the #1 island destination in the continental U.S. by Travel and Leisure magazine.
We are proud of our little slice of paradise.
And hope we have a chance to visit soon.
So hop on in and treat yourself
to fascinating history.
delicious island traditions,
and an unforgettable nightlife.
We look forward to seeing you soon on Mackinac Island.
The heart of winter. It beats inside you. It's that thing urging you outside when the forecast calls for snow. Some were born with it. For others, it was carved with care. But for all who take winter to heart, it's time. Feel the rhythm of the season and pursue your Pure in Pure, Michigan.
Welcome back to My Michigan Television. I'm Steve Lehto. We're talking to Dr. Dawn Batts from Techtown Capital. She's the capital strategist there at Techtown Detroit. And this program that we're talking about has a goal of recruiting and training 200 high net worth individuals from Michigan who are underrepresented in the angel investor community and activate their potential as investors with the goal of supporting 50 projects, including up to $34.7 million in early stage capital. Do you have any examples that you can tell us of some success stories that have come from this program?
Yeah, so we're a year and a half in the program, so I think that's important to note. And also just the process of angel investing. But today we're very proud that we have nearly 90 people that are in the program, of which about 80 have taken the courses. And they're now starting to engage in other parts of the ecosystem. So we've had, a good number of people who are now mentors or have been mentors in residence for some of the Venture Well programs that we talked about earlier. They have engaged as mentors in Techstars Detroit. They've been judges at U of M pitch competitions. So they're starting to get in the ecosystem. And they're really starting to hone that skill, if you will. And so that is a big deal. That I think we won't really know the full effect of that, for another 18 months, 24 months, when you start seeing them invest in companies potentially.
Right. I find this such a very exciting concept because I've been in Detroit my entire life, this area. And I remember going downtown Detroit over the years, and some things come and go. The Hudson's building, for instance, Tiger Stadium.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, now you're seeing some stuff coming back. And every time I come downtown Detroit, if I have the opportunity to start at the foot of Woodward and drive up, it seems that every single year it gets a little further up. That new stuff is coming and exciting stuff is happening, and you can't turn around a ship of this size in a small space. It takes time. It's like an aircraft carrier, but you do it one bit at a time. So one investor works with one entrepreneur and starts a business downtown and gets things going, or even in the state of Michigan or in the general area, it's all good. It's all good. So I'm very excited that you guys are doing this. And now if people want to find out more about the information about how this works, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, there are two ways. They can always go to techtowndetroit.org, and there's the Catalyst Angel program is listed. It talks about more about what we're doing there. And there's also a little button they can push to say they're interested and fill out that form. Or if they have specific questions, they can also email us at growthcapital@techtowndetroit.org.
Okay, well, next time you're watching TV and you see a story on the History Channel about some guy who invented this thing and became a billionaire, and you go, wow, if only I'd had that opportunity. Well, if you're a high wealth individual and you're Black, Latinx, a woman in the Great Lakes region, contact Techtown Detroit and look into the Catalyst Angel program, and maybe someday you'll be on the History Channel to talk about what you did, okay?
Thank you, Steve. Indeed, we look forward to hearing from people that are interested in the program.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dawn Batts, the Techtown Capital Strategist. Thank you very much for being on this show.
Thank you.
There you go. So Catalyst Angel Program, if you're a high wealth individual, you're Black, Latinx, woman in the Midwest, you can contact them and look into becoming an angel investor. And that would be a great opportunity for you to invest your money and possibly make some more than you get having it sit in a bank account where it'll just rot and get you like 0.001% interest. Now, I have to tell you that I have to now talk about something that was troubling to me that I discovered yesterday. And last night, someone sent me an email out of the blue and said, Steve, did you hear about Finlandia University? I had not heard. And I went and looked, and Finlandia University is the small university in Hancock, Michigan, where my grandfather was the dean of the school until 1961 or 62. My mother and my father met there, and it was a small school founded by Finns in the 1890s. They announced yesterday they are closing for good. They are shuttering the operation and walking away from it. And it is a total shock in the community up there. It's a shock in the Finnish community. It's a shock to my system. I had to call my father last night, and he had not heard. And I called my dad and I said, hey, Dad, I got some bad news. And he goes, what's that? And I said, Finlandia just announced they're closing. And I could tell it took him a moment to process it. And he said, do you know why? And I said, well, they claim it's declining enrollment and a burden of debt that they cannot get out from under. They don't think there's an end in sight. Therefore, they're going to shutter the operations. They've stopped enrolling students. This semester will be their last. I've got friends who are professors there. I know people at the Finnish American Heritage Center. I got friends at the Finnish American Reporter, which is the Finnish newspaper that I get. I look to see if I have a copy. I've got a copy down here, but it's buried underneath stuff. And so I was shocked by this news. And you have to understand that Finlandia was called Suomi College back in the old days. Suomi is what Finns call Finland. And so many people couldn't pronounce Suomi properly that they just said, we'll call it Finlandia. And so they changed the name a while back. But when my grandfather taught there and was a dean, it was Suomi College. And so I've known a lot of people who graduated from the school because of my Finnish heritage. But I have to tell you that hearing that they're shutting down, even though I didn't go there, is such a massive, shocking thing. I don't even know if I can possibly explain it properly, but I'm going to try. So first of all, here's the story as told by the Detroit Free Press. Up North's Finlandia University to close after this school year. David Jesse wrote this. The only private university in Michigan's Upper Peninsula will shut its doors after this school year because of low enrollment, school officials announced yesterday. Finlandia University in Hancock, just north of Houghton in the Keweenaw Peninsula, will not enroll any new or returning students next year. The move is due to a combination of demographic changes with fewer high school graduates available, a steep decrease in interest in going to college among those graduates, and an unbearable debt load, the school's board wrote in a letter to its community. The school had about 424 undergraduate students enrolled in the fall of 2021, the most recent year for which those numbers are available. Finlandia President Timothy Pino, who I have not met, I knew the previous president, but not this guy, said the decision follows months of constant and repeated attempts to mend Finlandia University's finances and enrollment struggles. I do want to assure you that the leadership team, the board of trustees, and myself have left no stone unturned in an attempt to avoid this day, he said in his letter to the community. Our efforts have been noble and unceasing, and while none of us wanted this day to come, we've also realized that in order to honor Finlandia's 126-year-old legacy appropriately, we must end its operations with grace and dignity. As the leadership of Finlandia, our focus must now first turn to making sure that all of our students have good options to complete their education at another institution, that we can fulfill our intent that our employees be paid for all the work and tireless effort they put into this little Finnish Lutheran school way up north in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. And he mentions the Finnish Lutheran school. It was originally founded, I believe, as a seminary in the 1890s and expanded very quickly into just a liberal arts college. The school was established in 1896 by Finnish immigrants at Suomi College. It is one of 26 colleges and universities affiliated with the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. Suomi College changed its name in 2000 to Finlandia University. In addition to its teaching, the university is also home to the Cultural Center of Finns in North America, the Finnish American Heritage Center. I know many people there. In addition, the university has unique curriculum focused on Nordic studies, several Finnish exchange students and interns each year, and the Finnish American Reporter, a monthly newspaper celebrating Finnish American heritage. The school's administration is working to try to come up with options for current students, including finalizing teach-out agreements with Michigan Tech, Bay College, Adrian College, and Wartburg College. A fifth agreement is in process with Northern Michigan. These will allow students to have their credits transfer smoothly. And if you started at Finlandia, you can go over to Tech or Adrian or Bay and enroll there, and the transferred credits will help you towards a degree there. Several small private colleges across Michigan and Midwest have struggled with finances. They're heavily dependent on enrollment, which brings in tuition dollars. However, demographers are finding smaller and smaller numbers of students graduating from high schools each year. That smaller pool of students means colleges are competing more directly for each and every student, especially the small, private, liberal arts colleges that dot the Midwest. There, the demographic decline of traditional age students is among the highest of any region in the nation. According to federal data, there were 420,000 undergrads on 45 four-year college campuses in the fall of 2010. In 2010, that had fallen to 354,000, which is about a 16% drop. So that's the story from the Detroit Free Press. And when I saw the various stories floating around the internet last night, I sent a couple notes to friends of mine who are connected to the school just to let them know I'd heard the news and offer any help I could. Most of them were simply in shock from this happening, because you can imagine that this was not, nobody saw this coming. I guess there had been some rumors, there were some issues, but nobody quite thought they were fatal to the operation. So the letter from the faculty, the Board of Trustees letter says, "Dear Finlandia community, I'm deeply saddened to announce that due to a combination of demographic changes, a steep decrease in interest in going to college among its graduates, Finlandia's Board of Trustees met and decided to not enroll students for the 2023 to 2024 school year. As you can imagine, this was a difficult and painful decision to make. We know it will be felt deeply by each and every person it affects. I want to assure you that the Board of Trustees made every possible effort to work with President Pinot and his leadership team to avoid this conclusion. We as a board and leadership team left no stone unturned in our attempts to move Finlandia forward toward a healthier future. While none of us wanted this day to come, we also have realized that in order to honor the legacy, we must end the operations with grace and dignity. Board feels enormous gratitude for all its employees, faculty, and staff who have worked tirelessly to make Finlandia the best it could be, even under the most challenging of financial circumstances. Your contributions will live on. And most importantly, we thank all the students, past and present, who chose Finlandia for their educational pursuits. President and his leadership are working diligently to help our current students wrap their studies up, and will help them smoothly transition to another college or university to complete their education. On behalf of the entire Board of Trustees, I offer sincere gratitude and remorse. Michael Nakala, Finlandia Board of Trustees." So that is the official announcement that came out last night. I sent notes or spoke to a few of my brothers. Again, I did not attend, my brothers did not attend, but we're all very familiar with it because my mother and father having met there and being from that area, Suomi College was such an integral part of the community up there. You have to understand that there's a Finnish community in the Houghton Hancock area, such that the street signs in Hancock have Finnish and English on them. And the names up there look like my family reunion rosters, because all the names up there, the businesses, are all Finnish names. The number of Finns up there is striking. And it's because so many of them came there in the 1880s, 1890s, and so on. And they came for the mines, primarily for the jobs, but they also knew there were more Finns there, and you want to be around people that you speak the language of. And so Finlandia and Suomi College was the center of that in many respects. Obviously, the churches were big too, social clubs were big, but the university was recognized as being leaders among the community because so many Finns graduated from there and stayed in the area. And everywhere I would go up there, people would ask me, and they say, "Oh, Lehto, is your grandfather Pop Lehto?" I'd say, "Yes." My grandfather was affectionately known as Pop Lehto at Suomi College when he was there. And he was there for quite a while. He wound up being the dean. He retired, but he kind of stayed on for a little while, emeritus. And he lived right down the street from it. In fact, the street he lived on is called Summit Street. And there's a hill on both sides of the canal there, the Portage Canal. And by the way, behind the camera, I've got a photograph of the Houghton Hancock Bridge. And in the background of the bridge is the school. So I literally am looking at the school every single day. I'm in my studio here. And I would get asked that by so many people. And I've spoken up in the UP dozens and dozens and dozens of times about different topics, everything from the Italian Hall disaster to Douglas Houghton. And invariably, somebody will come up to me and say, "Oh, I had your grandfather for a class. I knew your grandfather." And many, many people went through that school and knew him and had fond memories of him, would tell me about that. And I knew, of course, visiting him as a child, that he had retired by that point. But the school is right there. He lived on the street. He could walk to the school, do his job, and walk home. You know, and so the university, the campus of the university now, there's several buildings there. It's a little bigger now than it was when my grandfather was teaching there. It started out with a building called the Old Main, just this big sandstone building right there on the main street in Hancock. And then later on, they added some more buildings along the way. And it looks more like a small university now than it did back in the old days. But it's a small school. And as pointed out, it's private. So they don't get, the same kind of state support other schools get. And the student body numbers were quite small lately, I guess 300-400, which is pretty small. And if you're relying on the money from those students in tuition to cover the expenses, you can imagine that's a pretty tough slog. So that wouldn't have gone very far. But I was literally thinking about this today and saying, I'm gonna talk about this on My Michigan Television when I do my show. And I literally sent Jared a note, my producer, and said, today I'm just going to talk about Finlandia. That's it. And I literally have got a bunch of stuff here. I'm going to tell stories and stuff about Finlandia. And it's such an integral part of my history, even though I didn't go there, that I knew I'd have no trouble finding stuff to talk about that's fascinating and interesting about Finlandia. So we're going to do exactly that. We're going to talk about Finlandia right after this on My Michigan Television.
Don't miss out! Download the My Michigan TV mobile app to stay up to date with all of our programming.
Welcome back to My Michigan Television. I'm Steve Lehto. We're talking about the tragic closing of Finlandia University in the UP. And it's a small school in Hancock. My grandfather was the dean there. Both of my parents went there. That's where they met. And my family lived in the area for a while also. My grandfather lived right down the street from the school. And so I was thinking about this morning, and I grabbed a copy of my father has done the genealogy on his side of the family going way back. I'm talking about hundreds and hundreds of years. And so I grabbed the bio of my grandfather because I thought this was interesting. My grandfather's name was Wayno Lehto, and he actually started out in Pennsylvania at one point, but he enrolled at Suomi College in 1912 in the commercial department, but he only stayed there 1 year. And then he had to go back to work, probably for money, but he worked as a bookkeeper in a mill in Pennsylvania. But he returned to Suomi College in 1914, and he completed his high school education there. You could actually get a high school diploma from it, okay? Now, he also served in the military right around there, World War I. He was drafted. He served in the medical corps in the U.S. Army. And upon his discharge, he enrolled at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. He was also then offered a teaching position at Suomi College, which he took, arriving in Hancock in the fall of 1920. 1920. I know that he retired, I believe, in like 61 or 62. And he met his wife there, my grandmother, Elizabeth, and they courted in 1920 and 21, and they were married in August of 1921. And they taught together at Suomi College through the 2022-2023 school year. So 100 years ago, my grandfather and grandmother were teaching there. He later went and completed his education at Penn. And then after he earned a degree from the Wharton School of Finance in 1925 and his master's, he was again offered a job by Suomi College as the teaching principal of the commercial department, which he taught continuously until 1962. He did miss a trimester, he missed a semester while he recovered from a burst appendix. And he was named the Dean Emeritus upon his retirement from Suomi College in 1962. So that's my grandfather's time there. But he taught classes, and he also helped run the place as a dean. And like I said, so many people come up to me and said, I had your grandfather. He taught me. And one story I've got to tell you, and I may have told this story before, but I'm not sure. But I'm gonna tell it anyways. There was a broadcaster in the Houghton Hancock area named Dick Storm. Dick Storm was on the air for 50 years up there. And in fact, I pulled his bio because in 2014, he celebrated his 50th year on the air in the Copper Country on the radio. And his name was Dick Storm. That's the English version of his last name. He grew up in Toivola, but moved away to attend a broadcast school in Wisconsin. He worked at another station before he returned to WMPL in Hancock. And then, of course, he was there for 50 years in the Q&A, spinning the records, playing polka music, country music, and anything else came along the way. You might say, Steve, what does Dick Storm have to do with this? Did he go to Suomi College? He did briefly. But this is the kind of story that I think is very, very difficult to explain without just hearing it. I was speaking in the Upper Peninsula a couple of years ago, and I bumped into Dick Storm. I met the guy. He's a very, very nice guy. I've heard him on the radio. My parents listened to him, obviously. So he comes up to me. He goes, hey, Steve, he goes, I got a story about your grandfather. I go, oh, did you go to Suomi? He goes, for a very brief period of time. Now, Dick Storm is blind. He's legally blind. And so you know that when you're talking to him. And so he goes, well, here's the deal. He goes, I've been blind my entire life. And he goes, I wanted to get into radio. And I wanted to work in radio. I thought radio would be a cool job to have. I can relate, you know. He goes, so I applied to broadcast school in Minnesota. Is it Minnesota or Wisconsin? He applied to broadcast school in Wisconsin. And they turned him down when they found out he was blind. And he asked them why, and they go, "You're blind. You can't go to broadcast school if you're blind." And back then they could do that. So he said, "Okay." So he's a local boy from Toivola, which is not far from the area. So he enrolls at Suomi College. He's sitting in the front row at Suomi College, and he's blind, and he's sitting in a business class taught by my grandfather. My grandfather walks in, starts taking attendance, and realizes, hey, there's Dick Storm. And he knows the kid's blind. And he goes, can I talk to you for a second? And he pulls him aside, and he goes, I'm just curious, is this really where you want to be? And Dick said, no, I wanted to go to broadcast school, but they wouldn't let me because I'm blind. My grandfather said, are you kidding me? And Dick goes, no. My grandfather goes, which would you rather do? Get a business degree here or go to broadcast school in Wisconsin and go into radio? He goes, I want to go to broadcast school and go into radio. So Dick told me, he said, your grandfather took me down to his office, said, what's the name of the school that wouldn't let you in? And I told him. And he called information, called the number, got the president on the line, said, hi, my name is Steve Lehto, calling from Suomi College in Hancock, Michigan. And I understand the gentleman in front of me, Dick Storm, applied to get into your school and you wouldn't let him in because he's blind. And the guy goes, yeah, he can't study or go to school or learn anything if he's blind. The grandfather goes, sir, he's sitting right in front of me. He's a very, very smart guy, but he's enrolled in one of my classes right now. I got news for you. If he can pass my class, he can pass your class. How about this? I'll personally vouch for him. And if he goes out there and can't do it, well, then I'll apologize, send him back, and we'll put him back in my class. But I'm pretty certain that he's got the drive and the intelligence and the ability to do it. So how about this? We'll send him out there and we'll enroll him in your school. And the guy goes, based on your recommendation, we'll do it. We'll do it. So Dick Storm said, oh, thank you very much. Went to Wisconsin, flew through broadcasting school, came back and spent 50 years on the radio in the Houghton Hancock area, became a legend in the area. And what's amazing about that story is I had never heard that story before. My grandfather never told anybody that story as far as I know. My father hadn't heard that story. And so when I was talking to Dick about this, I go, Dick, I've never heard this story before. He goes, I'm not sure that he would have gone out and told people that he did that for me. He goes, but he just, he goes, I was sitting in his class and I was, and he could have probably gotten through that class and done well in it too. Obviously, as a blind student, he's going to have some handicaps along the way, some difficulties, some hurdles. And he said, though, that your grandfather went so far out of his way to take care of that and to call the president of the school directly and say, I'm confident he can pass my class. And he didn't quite say it this way, but he could certainly pass a broadcasting class. And so he went there, and the guy took Dick Storm in basically on the recommendation of my grandfather, who said, I will vouch for him. There you go. So when he did his celebration of 50 years in broadcasting, it was 50 years ago this afternoon. This is 2014, though, that Dick Storm did his first radio show in the Copper Country. From Toivola, he went to broadcast school in Wisconsin. He was out of the area for about a year and a half. His first local radio program was the Afternoon Polka Party on September 2nd, 1964 on WMPL. By the way, I've been on the radio on WMPL. A good friend of mine just retired from there not so long ago. Dick went on to become a co-owner of a radio station for many years. He's a member of the Michigan Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame. Continues to host a weekend country oldies program on WCUP. And he was congratulated by these people for 50 years of extraordinary broadcast service. And he's one of those guys who's been in the community for so long that people hearing his voice on the radio, it just seems like that's the natural order of things. And he should be the guy telling us the news. Did news for a long, long time. And like I said, that story that he told me about my grandfather, I'd never heard it before. And I don't know how many people had heard that story before. And I told that story to my dad. He's like, I never heard that story before. But he knew who Dick Storm is. Of course he did, you know? And so the family was living up in that area for a long, long time. And, you know, those 50 years overlapped with 50 years of my life. And like I said, I met the guy, very, very nice guy. And he goes, yeah, but I got to tell you what happened. And by doing the math on it, that story must have happened about 1960, 59 or 60. And so, you know, when you see a school, if you drive to Hancock today, you cross the Houghton-Hancock Bridge, hang a left, the road curves around, you go down the main street, it's a one-way street, and you'll come to the Finnish American Heritage Center, and then the buildings of Finlandia are right there. And the building is obviously part of that community, and the campus is part of the community. It's a piece of the puzzle, right? But it's not the buildings, and it's the people who are there, the people who've been there, and how that has impacted everybody that they've come in contact with. And so, yeah, somebody goes to school and gets a degree. I went to Oakland University, got a bachelor's degree in history, and haven't really been back much since. But I bumped into a lot of people along the way, and, you know, there's that. But I look at this little school in this little town, and you realize what an impact it had on so many people. And for every Dick Storm out there, there's all kinds of other people with stories that are just as fascinating and just as, I don't know, heartwarming. And you can't quantify that. You can't measure that. You can't, I mean, it's just so important. And so when I heard that the schools would be closing for good, I just started thinking about all of those stories and all those people. And obviously everything that's happened so far, those stories will still be there. But there were stories like that happening all along the way. Okay, so for every story about a Dick Storm in 1960 being pulled aside by a professor who said, I'm going to make a call for you, there was somebody last year, the year before, you know. Like I said, I've got friends who are on the faculty there, got friends at the Finnish American Heritage Center there. And every time I talk to them and hang out with them, I hear stories about stuff that's happening now, you know. And unfortunately, that stuff is going to stop happening. And that's so hard to imagine. And so I don't know what's going to happen. There's so much else. You know, if you simply shut down a business, you know, at a strip mall, one business moves out, another business moves in. I don't know what happens when a university closes, because they've got a campus, they've got buildings. Will somebody buy those buildings, or will they knock the buildings down? Will they build houses? What are they going to do? You know, so there's so much there that I'm very curious about how they're going to unwind the business of the university. And I'm also very sad to know that if the university was in distress financially, I hadn't heard that. And it would be kind of nice to have known that, because I don't know, maybe somebody out there could scrape up some money. I don't know how much money they needed. That's another big question mark. You know, are they $1 million in debt or $100 million in debt? I don't know. But unfortunately, they've drawn the line and said it's too late to do anything at this point about it. And it's certainly beyond a saving, is what they're saying. So the strange part is, just a couple of years ago, there was a hospital about a mile away from the main campus that was vacant. And the school bought the hospital and were running a business incubator out of it, trying to help small businesses get started and so on. So I was under the impression that because they had done that they had, you know, some resources laying around. And then I know a couple of years ago, they started a football team, an actual football, not soccer, football. And many people question that because football is a very, very expensive sport, and not a lot of Finns play football. I'm not aware of any Finns who've played in the NFL. NHL, all day long. NFL, no, not so much. So we're going to continue talking about the demise of Finlandia University. Very, very sad. And we'll talk some more about that right after this on My Michigan Television. Welcome back to My Michigan Television. I'm Steve Lehto. We're talking about Finlandia University closing their doors for good. They are no longer enrolling students, and the school is going to shut down. They've been around for like 125 years. It's just crazy. It's an institution that I've been familiar with my entire life, and it's one of those moments. I got a note yesterday from somebody, and it was shocking to me, and I sent notes out to everybody I know who is in the community, and pretty much everyone is shocked by this. But, you know, along with the university, like there's a school, they have classes and professors and degrees and all that stuff. They also have the Finnish American Heritage Center, which is a building right in front of the school. You can't miss it because it's got a bright blue roof. A lot of stuff in Finland is blue, color on our flag. And the Finnish American Heritage Center houses the editorial staff of the Finnish American Reporter, which is a newspaper that I subscribe to because, of course, I do. And it comes up monthly, and it's primarily in English, but there's some here and this in Finnish, but it's aimed at the Finnish community in America. And I've known the editor there for 20 years, and the guy before him, I knew him also. He retired about a year or two ago. And the Finnish American Reporter is one of the major publications that people of Finnish descent read in America because it's aimed at us. And for instance, when my mother passed away, they ran her obituary, and they've supported me quite a bit. I've spoken at the Finnish American Heritage Center many times. When my book about the Italian Hall disaster first came out, I was speaking to somebody at Finlandia. This, you should come in and speak about that. I said, I'd love to, because, you know, many of the victims of the Italian Hall disaster are Finnish. And they said, so that's such a big, important event in the Finnish community. It would make sense for you to speak here. I said, I'd love to. We picked a date. They called me back and said, are you interested in speaking more than once? I said, on different days? They go, no, same day. I go, what's happening? They said, well, we can only fit so many people in the auditorium here. We have more than enough people who want to come that we want to have you speak twice. Could you do that? I said, I'd love to. A little while later, they said, can you speak 3 times? And they had actually put out a call in the community and said, hey, Steve Lehto is going to come speak at the Finnish American Heritage Center about the Italian Hall disaster, an event so important to the Finnish community. And anybody who wants to can come. And there were schools that brought busloads of kids in to hear me speak. And it was a wonderful experience, but them hosting that was just amazing. They went so far out of their way to do that for me. And right next door is Northwind Books. And Northwind Books is the school bookstore. So obviously you're taking an economics class, you buy your textbook at Northwind Books. But they also have a very big collection of books that are on other topics and so on. And you know, they do a lot of stuff that has to do with the Finnish culture and history and so on. And so they've also been one of the people who sell a lot of my books. So I've sold a lot of books. I've done book signings at Northwind Books. And the Finnish American Heritage Center also hosts the archives, the Finnish American Heritage Center archives. And it's the Finnish archives. They've got all kinds of stuff there of interest to Finns. I did research there for my book on the Italian Hall disaster because there's a lot of documents that they had in their collection that dated back to 1913. And so I did a lot of research there. I've known a few of the archivists who worked there. And in the archives, they've even got some poetry written by my great-grandfather, not my grandfather, my great-grandfather on my mother's side, which we later published in a book called A Rascal's Craft. It's another story altogether. But when my mother was gathering up her grandfather's poetry, and she had this big collection of this stuff, she's talking to me about what to do with it. And I bumped into the archivist and the guy who ran the Heritage Center, and I said, hey, have you ever heard of Elu Kiviranta? He goes, yeah, why? I go, what do you know about him? He goes, he's the poet. He wrote all his poems. He's a Finnish poet. And that's my great-grandfather. He goes, no, really? I go, yes. He said, do you have any of his poetry? I go, my mom has all of it, all of it. And my great-grandfather had a printing press. He'd write poetry, print it up into little checkbooks, and he'd ride his bicycle around the community and sell his poetry. And so I bumped into people at booklets of my great-grandfather's poetry. And so my mom gathered up all of those and donated them to the archives so that they will be kept forever. So I don't know what's going to happen to the archives. I don't know what's going to happen to the reporter. So I'm hoping that they can at least save all that stuff, or at the very least find somebody who can become the new custodian of it and take care of it. It might be they've got to link up with some other archive. But as for the school itself right now, the students there who are like 1 year in are kind of in limbo because they're going to have to finish their school someplace else. At least Finlandia has found other schools who will take these students, but now you got to uproot yourself and go to another school. And that's sad. What's going to happen to the rest of the buildings and stuff? I don't know. It's so heartbreaking to see something this old, 125 years old, something this old go away. And it's so unfortunate. But like I said, I'm hoping at the very least that they can find someplace to house those archives, or at least keep the archives running. And of course, keep the presses running at the Finnish American Reporter. And I just also feel horribly for my friends who work at the school, because many of them found out, in essence, yesterday that their job is going to end when this semester ends. And some of them thought that they had a job for life there because my grandfather did, you know. So it's a very, very sad day. There's going to be a lot more fallout from this, I'm sure. We'll hear some more in the coming weeks. And so I'll do updates from time to time. I want to thank you for indulging me. I admit this is a bit self-indulgent for me to come on here and talk about the school closing of a school I didn't even attend. But it was so important to my life, my history, my legacy, my everything, my family, that it's unthinkable to me. And I remember waking up this morning and I woke up and I'm like, oh, Finlandia closed. Like it was one of those things where it struck me again. And it's going to take a little while for me to even get used to the idea of it. And so, and like I said, I don't work there. I didn't attend there. So I can only imagine what it feels like for the people who did work there and so on. In fact, I got to tell one last story. I was walking through the archives a while back, and there's an organ, a pump organ, you know, a musical instrument up against the wall. And I looked at it and I said, hey, excuse me, where'd this come from? And the archivist goes, oh, do you recognize it? And I go, yeah, that's the pump organ that my grandfather saved from one of the buildings here that was getting torn down years ago. And he put it in his camp, his cottage. And when he sold his cottage, he gave it to my family, and my family eventually gave it back to the archives. And that pump organ had a little note on it and said, this is the original pump organ from something to do with the campus 50, 60 years ago. It had sat in my den at my family's house for 20 years. And I used to play with that organ. And there it is right there in the Finnish American Heritage Center. What's going to become of it? I don't know. I don't know. So I hope I find out soon, and I hope everybody's okay. And again, thank you for indulging me on this little quest down memory lane for me. Finlandia University closing its doors permanently. That's going to wrap up for me today, this Friday. Also this week, I will see you on Monday, batten down the hatches because the snow is coming, they tell me. We'll see. Otherwise, I will talk to you on Monday, 11 o'clock, as I always do, right here on My Michigan Television. Bye-bye.
My Michigan TV is streaming everywhere on Apple TV, Roku, Fire TV, and more smart TV apps. My Michigan TV is on your phone too. Take us with you wherever you go. Just search for My Michigan TV on your favorite app store or visit mymitv.com. All Michigan